September 4th, 1961, 421 Convent Avenue, Harlem, 2:47 p.m. The box arrived at the front door of 421 Convent Avenue at 2:45 in the afternoon, wrapped in white paper with a dark green ribbon and a card that said, "To Mrs. Delaney, with warmest regards," signed only a neighbor. No return address, no last name, just the warmth and the ribbon and the chocolates inside that had been selected specifically because Eleanor Delaney had mentioned them to her husband once, in passing 2 years ago, in a conversation that had taken place inside their apartment with no one else present. Eleanor brought the box inside and set it on the kitchen table. Marcus was at the club on 121st Street. Thomas, the man Marcus kept on the front step, was on the phone in the hall. She made tea. She opened the box. The chocolates were the handmade kind from the shop on Lexington, dark and precisely shaped, each one sitting in a paper cup inside a wooden tray. She ate 4 of them because she was tired and because they were beautiful. By 2:47, she was on the kitchen floor. Not a fall, a collapse. Her legs went without warning. Her abdomen produced a pain that had no relationship to anything she had felt before. A slow burning that spread from one side to the other, as though something was being drawn through her from the inside. Her body began doing things without her instruction, and at the corner of her mouth a foam appeared that had nothing to do with anything ordinary. Her eyes were open. She was completely present inside a body that was being systematically taken apart, and she could not do anything except be present in it. Thomas heard the sound through the door. He was inside in 4 seconds. He looked at Eleanor on the floor. He looked at the kitchen table, the open box, the 4 empty cups, the card. He did not shout. He did not touch anything on the table. He made 2 calls in the order that Marcus had established for exactly this category of emergency. Ambulance first. Then Marcus. Marcus Delaney covered the distance from the club to Convent Avenue in 6 minutes. He came through the door and went directly to Eleanor on the gurney and took her hand and held it through the loading, through the doors, through the ride to Harlem Hospital, because the hand was the only available thing, and he was not going to release it. Dr. Anna Webb met them at the entrance. She had been treating the Delaney family for 8 years. She understood Harlem the way doctors who practice in it for a long time understand it. She looked at Eleanor for 10 seconds on the gurney. Then she pulled Marcus aside and said in a voice calibrated to reach his ears and no further, "This is not natural." "Poisoning," Webb said. "The next 5 hours will tell us how much she absorbed. The compound is working fast. She needs treatment now." Marcus went back to Eleanor's side. He looked at the clock. He looked at her. He sat in the chair beside the bed and did the arithmetic that the situation required, quietly and completely. The way he did arithmetic when it mattered. Someone had put that box on his wife's doorstep. Someone who knew her address, her Tuesday afternoon, what she ate when she was alone. Someone who had studied her, the way you study a target, had converted that study into a delivery, and had timed it for when Marcus would be across town, and Eleanor would be alone, with a box of beautiful chocolates, and nothing between her and them. That was not a message. A message is designed to be received. This was designed to be concluded. At 4 o'clock, he used the payphone at the end of the hospital corridor. He called Thomas and said, "Go back to the apartment. Everything she touched today, the box, the ribbon, the card, you carry it yourself to Dr. Webb. Nobody else handles it." Webb came out at 4:30 and set it flat. 2 compounds combined. The first causes cellular deterioration. The second accelerates it. Together they produce symptoms that mimic cardiac arrest without triggering the standard markers on a basic tox screen. Whoever made this compound has laboratory access and understands human physiology at a level that is not amateur. They calculated the dose for a woman of Eleanor's approximate weight, consuming a specific quantity of chocolate on an empty afternoon stomach. A warning uses 1 compound at low dosage. This was calibrated for termination if she finished the box. Thomas moved fast enough, Webb said. The probability is better than it was at 2:47. At 6 o'clock, the back room of the Monarch Club held 5 men around a table that Thomas had laid out like a crime scene, which it was. White paper flat, green ribbon beside it, card face up at the center, the remaining chocolates untouched. Marcus stood at the head of the table and read the card aloud. To Mrs. Delaney, with warmest regards, a neighbor. He set it down. That word, he said, neighbor. Someone chose it because it sounds like community. But the person who wrote it knows Eleanor's address and her Tuesday and what she eats when she is alone. That is not a neighbor. That is surveillance. And the person who ran that surveillance converted it into a delivery on my wife's doorstep in broad daylight. He looked at each man. Who? Calvin spoke without hesitation. Raymond Fitch, contract only, operates exclusively through indirect methods. 4 confirmed cases in 6 years, all successful, none prosecuted because in each case the evidence was metabolized along with the victim. His compounds are pharmaceutical grade. He was seen in Lower Manhattan on August 31st, meeting with a man whose name I am still pulling. Pull it faster, Marcus said. Sylvia Baptiste called at 7:20. The name Calvin is pulling, she said, connects to a man with a seat at the commission table. You move on Fitch without understanding who commissioned him, and you are starting something with more than one organization watching. Marcus said, Eleanor is in a hospital bed because someone sent poison to my door with her name on the card. Whatever the commission thinks can wait until after it happens. 48 hours, he said, starting at 2:47 yesterday. Find me Fitch. At 10:15 that night, Dr. Webb came out of the room and said, The worst of it has passed. She is through it. Marcus exhaled once, long and slow. The exhale of a man releasing something he had been holding since 2:45 without having been aware of how tightly he was holding it. Then he looked at his watch. They think she is gone, he said. Not to Webb. To the wall. The man who sent that box calculated the dose for a woman alone with no medical intervention available for at least an hour. Eleanor was gone by evening in his arithmetic. He does not know Thomas moved fast. Somewhere in this city, the man who sent that box believes he completed his job. That is the most dangerous kind of opponent. The one who thinks he already won. At 7:50 the next morning, Eleanor opened her eyes. She looked at the ceiling. Then she turned her head and looked at Marcus, who was in the same chair he had been in since 10:15, jacket still on, no sleep, elbows on his knees. Hey, Eleanor said. Hey, Marcus said. The chocolates, she said. Yes. Someone sent them on purpose. Yes. What are you going to do to make sure it does not happen again? Not who did this. Not are you going to find them? What are you going to do to make sure it does not happen again? The question of a woman who had been married to this man long enough to understand that the answer to the first question was already in motion. I am going to make sure the person responsible understands that touching my family ends them, Marcus said. Not as a threat. As a demonstrated fact that everyone else in this city with a similar idea can verify and draw the correct conclusion from. Eleanor looked at him for a long time. I do not want you to die because of me, she said. Marcus leaned forward. The person who sent that box knew your Tuesday. They knew what you eat when you are alone. They studied you. If I do not respond in a way that makes the next person think twice before they study you again, then I am telling everyone in this city that my family is available as a target whenever someone wants to send me a message. He looked at her directly. I cannot allow that. Not because of pride. because of you." Willie confirmed the location at 11 o'clock that night. Fitch had spent the evening at a corner table in Lower Manhattan with two men Willie recognized and a bottle of wine that communicated celebration rather than business. He had said something about a successful delivery, loudly enough for the adjacent table to hear, and the two men had laughed the laugh of men who find other people's misfortune professionally satisfying. Marcus listened and was quiet for a moment. "Where does he go tomorrow?" "Red Hook in the morning," Willie said. "Then Midtown. He left his security at his apartment. He is moving light." "Stay on him," Marcus said. "Call me every hour." Willie called at 8:50 the next morning. "Fitch is moving from Red Hook to Midtown. 1 car, 1 driver." Marcus looked at Calvin. "We take him on the street. 3 men at the Midtown approach, 2 on the driver, 1 to close the block." The operation lasted 22 seconds. Fitch was a careful man by profession, but careful men become less careful after a successful job. He was thinking about his afternoon meeting when the car stopped beside him, and the door opened, and the 2 men moved with the practiced coordination of people who had done this work enough times that it required no communication. Fitch was inside the car before his professional instincts had fully engaged. The warehouse was in the South Bronx. Concrete floor, single overhead light, a chair bolted to the floor. Fitch regained full presence at 11 o'clock and ran the methodology he had developed for rooms like this one, which involved denying everything in a calm, professional voice until the person doing the asking demonstrated that denial was more expensive than information. Marcus walked in and set the white box on the table in front of Fitch. Fitch looked at the box. His face shifted slightly. "You know what that is?" Marcus said. "I do not know what you are referring to," Fitch said. Marcus picked up the card and read it aloud. "To Mrs. Delaney with warmest regards. A neighbor." The person who chose that word also put 2 compounds inside 4 chocolates and left them on my wife's doorstep and calculated the dose carefully enough that she should have been gone by evening. She is not gone. That is the first thing you need to understand. The second thing is that the only currency you have in this room is the name of the person who commissioned the delivery." Fitch said nothing. The man behind his chair broke the index finger with a clean downward motion. Fitch's breath left him in a controlled exhalation that he was clearly working to keep smaller than it wanted to be. "There is a name I need," Marcus said in exactly the same tone. "Everything between now and when you provide it is determined by how long you take." "Phillip Gaines," Fitch said. The words came quickly. "Phillip Gaines commissioned the job 3 weeks ago. He said you had shut down 4 of his operations in Harlem over the past 2 years. He said the family was the only lever that would move you. He specified the delivery method. He specified the compound. He provided the address and the schedule." Marcus placed a recording device on the table. "Say it again," he said. "Everything. The name, the reason, the instruction. Clearly." Fitch looked at the device, then at his hand. He said it again, clearly and completely. Marcus picked up the device and returned it to his jacket. "You chose the delivery method," he said. "You calculated the dose. You wrote warmest regards on the card. Gaines gave you the instruction. You decided how to carry it out." He turned to the man behind the chair. "Finish it. Clean." He walked out before it was finished. He had a phone call to make. Phillip Gaines picked up on the second ring. Marcus said, "The fish market on the waterfront. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. You come to talk, or I come to your building tonight, and I bring the recording of Raymond Fitch, saying your name before I closed his account." Silence. "You do not have the standing for that demand," Gaines said. "I have a recording of your name, the instruction, the compound specification, and the language about using the family as a lever," Marcus said. "I have enough to take to every man with a seat at the commission table and present it as what it is. 6 o'clock. Come with 1 man or come with 30. It does not change what is in my jacket pocket. He hung up. At 5 in the morning, his people were already positioned. 2 men on the roof opposite the waterfront entrance, 3 men in the service alley, 4 men inside among the early workers. The fish market at 5:30 was all ice and ambient noise, and the specific shorthand of people who have done the same work in the same place for 20 years. The ambient noise covered conversation. The workers who arrived at 4 would be gone before 7 and would remember nothing. Phillip Gaines arrived at 6:11 with 22 men. He walked to where Marcus was standing near a crate of ice with the expression of a man who has agreed to a meeting he considers beneath his standing. "You have 30 minutes, Gaines said. Marcus took the recording device from his jacket and pressed the button. Raymond Fitch's voice came out of it in the cold morning air with the specific clarity of a man speaking under conditions that produce clarity. Gaines's name, the instruction, the reason, the fee, the language about using the family as leverage. Gaines listened to his own name coming out of a dead man's mouth. His face did not change. "That recording is inadmissible," Gaines said. "I am not taking it to court," Marcus said. "I am taking it to every man with a commission seat and presenting it with one argument. A man with a commission seat used a contract poisoner to target a civilian woman in order to apply personal pressure to a territorial dispute. He violated the foundational rule that keeps the entire structure from collapsing, which is that families are not targets." He looked at Gaines directly. "You are building a case. I am making a counter-argument." Something moved in Gaines's face. Just once. At that moment, 2 cars arrived at the market entrance that had not been part of either man's arrangement. 3 men emerged, whose presence at the waterfront at 6 in the morning communicated everything about the level at which the situation had been operating. They had been listening through their own channels. They had arrived not because Marcus had called them, but because the situation had called them. A commission member using pharmaceutical poison on a civilian woman to manipulate a territorial dispute is the kind of situation the commission cannot afford to leave unaddressed, not for moral reasons, for structural ones. "Nobody moves," the first man said. The 22 men Gaines brought went still. The 45 men Marcus had positioned in the surrounding geometry went still. The fish market workers continued loading crates. "Play it," the senior man said. Marcus played it again. The name, the instruction, the fee, the language about the family. The man to the senior man's right spoke. "The rule about families exists for a reason. If families become viable targets, everyone's families become viable targets. And then we are not running operations. We are running a war with no boundaries that produces the kind of federal attention none of us can manage." He looked at Gaines. "You knew the rule. You hired someone to violate it for a territorial advantage that had standard channels available to it." The senior man looked at Marcus. "You could have moved differently." "I wanted the commission to make the decision," Marcus said, "because if I make it alone, it looks like Harlem settling a personal score. If the commission makes it, it looks like the structure enforcing its own rules." The senior man nodded once. "We will handle it." "I need to handle it," Marcus said. "She is my wife." He sent poison to her door with her name on the card. The commission can authorize the action. But the action belongs to Harlem. The senior man considered this for 4 seconds. Then he nodded again. 48 hours, Marcus said. "I have 8 left. Use them," the senior man said. Gaines understood at that moment that the meeting he had come to believing he would dominate had been a proceeding from the second he arrived, and that the verdict had been reached before he walked through the entrance. His 22 men looked at each other, then at the geometry surrounding them that they were only now understanding the full scope of. Gaines said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Marcus buttoned his jacket. 40 hours down. 8 left. He walked out of the waterfront fish market and made one phone call and said 3 words, and it was done. The clock hit 48 hours at 2:47 in the afternoon of September 6th, 1961. Marcus was back at Harlem Hospital, in the chair beside Eleanor's bed, jacket on, no sleep, right where she had left him. The retaliation came on the 5th day. A numbers operation on 128th Street was hit. 2 of Marcus's men were shot outside the Monarch Club. The window of Calvin's car was put through at 3 in the morning. Marcus reinforced 421 Convent Avenue, steel door frame, laminated glass. Thomas on the step around the clock. 2 men in a car at the end of the block. A man on the roof across the street. The apartment became a fortress. Eleanor walked through the rooms one evening and looked at the laminated glass and the reinforced frames and the man visible on the roof across the street and said, without raising her voice, "I do not want to live like this." Marcus said, "It is temporary." "It is not temporary," she said. "This is what my life looks like if I stay here. A reinforced door and a man on the roof and a car at the end of the block that I pretend not to see every time I go to the store." She looked at him. "I survived poison in a box of chocolates. I am not going to survive this." "I am not angry," Eleanor said. "I understand why you did what you did. I know that if you had not done it, there would have been a second box and a third one until one of them worked." She sat down in the chair by the window. "But I cannot live in a fortress. And I do not want to be the reason the man I married spends the rest of his life managing the consequences of protecting me." She left for Baltimore on a Tuesday, the same day of the week as the box. She left a letter on the kitchen table. 1 page, no preamble. At the bottom, 1 question. "Which do you choose, me or Harlem?" Marcus drove to Baltimore on a Thursday. He found Eleanor in a rented room on a quiet street that smelled of someone else's cooking and had no reinforced door frame and no man on the roof. He sat down across from her and did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, "I am sorry. I protected you the way the street taught me to protect things," Marcus said. "I made you safe, and I made you a prisoner, and I told myself those were the same thing. Because in the world I operate in, they often are. They are not the same thing." He looked at his hands. "Temporary is what men like me say, when we mean we have not yet figured out another option." Eleanor said, "What are you going to do?" "Step back," Marcus said. "Not disappear, not abandon the neighborhood, but step back far enough that the target gets smaller. Transfer the day-to-day to men who can manage it." "And I am going to come to Baltimore on Thursdays." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Every Thursday," she said. "Every Thursday," he said. She looked at him with the expression of a woman calculating the probability that this particular man, with this particular history, will keep this particular promise, and arriving at a probability that is not certainty, but is enough. Marcus Delaney stepped back from Harlem not because he lost. He stepped back because Eleanor sat in the chair by the reinforced window and said, "I do not want to live like this." And that sentence was more precise and more final than anything Phillip Gaines had attempted with 2 compounds and 4 chocolates in a white box with a green ribbon. The real power is not in what you can bring down. It is in what you are willing to give up to keep the thing that matters most. Marcus Delaney drove to Baltimore every Thursday for the rest of his life. He was never late. This video is made for educational and entertainment purposes. The events depicted are fictional, and any resemblance to real persons is coincidental. If this resonated with you, subscribe and leave a like. New video coming soon.